Jonathan Edwards.
Fawr iawn, Mr Deputy Speaker. It's a huge pleasure to speak in this debate, and may I congratulate my honourable friend for Arfon on his speech that opened the debate. He set out the case in his usual forensic style, providing great clarity and detail about what is being proposed. Can I also say that I thoroughly enjoyed the speech from the member for North East Fife, once again proving why he's one of the superstar performers of this Parliament. My honourable friend from Ceredigion, again showing why he's one of the rising stars of Welsh politics. And of course my parliamentary leader, who spoke with her usual great authority and highlighted and concentrated on the example following the independence referendum in Ireland, or the independence of Ireland rather, at the beginning of the last century, and she gave us an absolutely fantastic history lesson during her contribution. Mr Deputy Speaker, on the morning after the referendum, the 24th of June 2016, I had been given the honour of being the guest speaker at the graduation ceremony of the local further education college in my county, Coleg Sir Gar. And the graduation ceremony was held at the fabulous racecourse Foslas in Cowie, which is in my constituency. Somewhat bleary-eyed and somewhat shell-shocked, I have to admit, after watching the results in the early hours of the morning, I remember vividly standing up at the podium and looking out at the hundreds of young graduates and their families before me. I dropped my speaking notes and went completely off script, and instead of diving into my speech of how proud they should be with their achievements and how they should look forward to their future, I apologised to those young people. My apology was based on being part of the political class that had allowed a set of circumstances that would reduce their life chances and opportunities compared to those that had been available to me and the generations before me. Primarily the right to travel, live, work and receive healthcare and reside in any other part of the European Union, amongst other rights. And we've had very powerful contributions from several members during the course of this debate, and I think that is actually the crux of what we're trying to grapple with today as we brought this motion before the House.
Honourable Member Gibby on that point.
Of course, yeah.
I'm grateful to the Honourable Member for giving me on that point. I apologise to his colleagues that I missed the start of the debate. The reason I wasn't in at the start was that, as was the Honourable Member for Stafford, who spoke a few minutes ago, some members from the Select Committee on Exiting the European Union had the privilege of meeting with a delegation from the Parliament of Slovakia, who are in Westminster just now. And I was reminded that...
Well, you don't have to give a reason why you're intervening. Don't worry about that. I just want to hear your intervention. Don't worry. Come on in, Peter Grant.
It is highly relevant, Mr Deputy Speaker, because most of the people that we met were born in the shadow of the Iron Curtain. They now have the right to travel all over Western Europe and a great deal of Central and Eastern Europe. Does he share my bafflement that at the same time as these people are celebrating their fairly recently won right to travel everywhere, we have a government here that seems determined to take measures which might endanger the right of future generations of UK citizens to travel as freely as our Slovakian friends can travel now?
Well, I'm extremely grateful for that intervention, Mr Deputy Speaker, and as always, my honourable friend makes a very valid point. And may I congratulate him for the excellent work that he's doing on that Select Committee. I was privileged to serve with him in the last Parliament, and his contributions are always extremely valuable. Much of the debate, Mr Deputy Speaker, following the referendum has surrounded the economic impact of Brexit. There is little doubt in my mind that the best way to protect the Welsh economy is to stay inside the single market and the customs union, and that has been my position from day one. This issue of European citizens' rights of UK subjects, however, has not had the level of consideration it deserves. At this point, I should pay tribute to Jill Evans, the Plaid Cymru MEP, representing the whole of Wales, who commissioned a report on this issue in the immediate aftermath of the referendum. Her work has gathered considerable support in the European Parliament, critically including Guy Verhofstadt, the lead Brexit negotiator for the Parliament. Indeed, I understand that the Minister of State, the member for Worcester, has had discussions with Mr Verhofstadt on this issue, and I'd be very grateful to learn in wind-up whether this particular issue was discussed yesterday with Mr Verhofstadt during his visit to London. The idea has also gained the support of the European Parliament's Constitutional Affairs Committee. I sense, perhaps wrongly, that the British Government have an open mind to what we are proposing today. And I'm being kind, Mr Deputy Speaker, because it's been a very good-natured debate so far. The DEXU Secretary of State himself, in response to the Honourable Member for Stafford, and I'm delighted to see my honourable friend in his place and for his contribution earlier in the debate, which again hit the nail on the head. The DEXO Secretary of State is on the record as saying, and I quote, "The aim of this exercise is to be good for Europe and good for Britain," which means good for the citizens of Europe and Britain. This is what we intend to do. In her speech last Friday at the Mansion House, the Prime Minister failed to provide any great clarity on some of the main issues which have concerned right honourable and honourable colleagues in relation to the British Government's Brexit policy. However, a part of her speech did catch my attention when she conceded that despite a hard Brexit policy, she would seek to negotiate UK associate membership status with several EU agencies.
I completely agree with the Honourable Gentleman about the benefits of us remaining in the single market and the customs union, but where I disagree with him is to say that the Prime Minister's policy is one of a hard Brexit. If there was one thing that came absolutely out of that Mansion House speech, it was a firm rejection of a hard Brexit. Would he at least agree with me on that?
Always delighted to hear from my honourable friend who I work very closely on these matters. However, I fear the Prime Minister in his speech managed to continue this strategy of trying to placate both sides of the Conservative Party. And I think ultimately she's going to have to make a call one way or the other. The fact that the Honourable Lady welcomed the speech and the Honourable Member for North East Somerset welcomed the speech leaves me concerned that perhaps, and indeed the member for Monmouth opposite, perhaps leaves an element of concern in my view that she's not exactly making a definitive decision on those major issues that we both actually agree upon. So as I was saying, Mr Deputy Speaker, in that speech she did concede that she would seek associate membership of several EU agencies. And if this is the case, then why not apply the same principle to citizenship? Since Plaid Cymru launched our campaign on this issue over the weekend, my Twitter feed has become the location for a lively debate. And indeed, I was called earlier this afternoon a traitor by some people, and I think that indicates the strength of feeling that the debate has generated.
Respect the honourable gentleman, and I would totally condemn anyone who's referred to the honourable gentleman in that fashion for expressing his views, just as I'm sure he would on the other side. We've all got a duty here to be courteous in our debate.
For that intervention, and I think this debate is so serious it needs to be debated in a very reasonable and calm, rational manner, as we've seen today in this House. Most people, Mr Deputy Speaker, have been extremely supportive of what we are suggesting. Others have seen the campaign as some sort of plot to undermine the referendum result. This, of course, could not be further from the truth. What we are proposing is that, as a part of the negotiations, the British Government makes the case that those of us who wish to keep our current rights are able to do so. Those who wish to renounce their rights, also they would be able to renounce their rights if they so wished. And if the British Government was serious about healing the wounds from the referendum, I would argue this is an initiative they should be pursuing with vigour, because it's something that would be able to unite everybody in every part of the British state. The key point is that those rights we currently enjoy under the Maastricht Treaty do not in any way challenge or undermine our rights as subjects of the British state, and this was indeed a point made with vigour by my honourable friend from Ceredigion. They are additional rights. Any action by a government to take away those rights is an extremely serious matter, and there's no wonder, therefore, why this issue now finds itself before the courts in Europe. As someone who fundamentally believes in Welsh independence, I recognise that following the political freedom of my country, there will be a requirement to protect the rights currently enjoyed by the people of our respective countries, as was the case, of course, following Irish independence. And I think that answers the point that was raised by the member for East Renfrewshire, who is no longer in his place in the intervention he made on my honourable friend from Arfon. Professor Vulcan Roban, who I'm delighted to see in his place here, who formerly was from the University of Swansea but now works up in Dundee in Scotland. In his article in the New European over the weekend, he makes the case quite clearly that international and EU law should protect our current EU citizenship from Brexit. Now, I understand that legal opinion differs, and I readily admit that I am no legal expert. But he makes a compelling case, and he wrote, and I'd like to quote him at some length to finish my speech, Mr Deputy Speaker. Of course, a member state is free to terminate its membership for the future, but it cannot extinguish the citizenship that have already been created and the rights that have been exercised. These continue. Their status cannot be taken away neither by the European Union nor by one of its member states. This is also the impetus of the international law of treaties laid down in the 1969 Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. This international law will be binding on the EU, the UK and the remaining member states after Brexit. It governs in considerable detail the consequences that the withdrawal of a state from any treaty, including the founding treaties, entail. He finishes, one consequence is that the treaty ceases to bind, but the other is that the withdrawal must not have retroactive effect on the rights of individuals already created at the time of withdrawal. This results in a challenge to the European Commission as well as the British Government, and I readily admit that. And my understanding of matters is that the European Parliament is far more understanding of the case than the Commission. If this is the case, then MEPs will have an important role in scrutinising the negotiating tactics of Mr Barnier and his team. At the end of the day, as Professor Robin states, it's a matter of political will. And I hope that following the debate today, this Parliament will support this motion and mandate the British Government to negotiate a protection of the rights we all currently enjoy as European citizens.